Hello everyone. It's been a while since we talked about Stronghold SHX, but I believe in it now more than ever. And if anything, I'm going to show you some key things that I think you should stick around to the end of the outline for. And that basically is in regards to the Federal Reserve's bank confirming adoption of the new ISO 222 messaging format for Fedwire Fund service, and when it will start, and why that is so significant when it comes to Stronghold and those connections. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. Again, I'd just like to advise everybody to please smash the like button. It does trigger the algorithm and it helps get the program out to a larger base. So let's jump into this. You will see here, starting off from, believe it or not, Stronghold. And it basically mentions this reference to 222 labs. So I'm going to go ahead and full screen this. It states, don't miss out. Get the competitive edge with ISO 222. And then they put in a # 222 labs. Now, I want to state this real quick before we get more into the weeds of this. A lot of you guys, like myself, we're invested into Ripple's XRP, Stellar, some of the other ones that are tied into ISO, XDC, and so on. Stronghold is a platform that has a significantly lower market cap compared to those other projects. But when it comes to Stronghold, remittances always stand out. And some of these connections, specifically to ISO 222, and even better than that, to be built on Stellar in their ecosystem says a lot. So don't forget about that, especially when it comes to ISO 222. All right, back to the announcement. This was posted on July 3rd, just a few days ago, and it's crucial to understand some of these key things. So for one, it says, are you ready? Ready for what? ISO 222. Fedwire single day implementation starts March 2025. And I have more about that towards the end of the outline, but the Datos report shows 57% of the United States corporate finance pros want automated payables and receivables, with 46% planning to use ISO 222. 17% already adopted it. Get ahead, 222 labs. Well, you see some of this quick video in regards to this, and 222 labs has been around for a while, but I want to go ahead and pause some of these things. People talk about mass adoption. How do we get to that mass adoption? Well, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's referencing some of these things that they're pointing out. Now, I'm going to take you over to 222 labs. And it was really cool to see some of these things that they listed over here. So if you're wanting the URL for yourself, it's 222labs.com/endorsements. And going further down, it's awesome to see some of these endorsements. So number one, you have, for example, Visa. And it's Visa Canada, basically speaking. But it doesn't just end there. As we get more into it, it talks about what's going to emerge and how Visa consistently strives to promote payments innovation. We know that. I mean, heck, even before the concept of cryptocurrency and whatnot, I mean, Visa and MasterCard are pretty much all about payments. So they want to stay innovative. They don't want to get left behind. They don't want to become the AOL of payments, right? So you see some of these statements, and, some of the other ones, or even MasterCard. But look at this for a second. This statement from TCH in regards to RTP network, but more importantly, from Steve Ledford of the Clearinghouse. I'll read this statement real quick. He states, with the TCH RTP network, which is the Clearinghouse Real-Time Payments Network, if you're wondering what that stood for, getting excellent traction in the United States and similar systems emerging globally, ISO 222 is beginning to take root within the payments ecosystem. TCH and our members will benefit from insights into corporate use cases that 222 labs will, of course, provide. Well, how so? How do we get to that statement of greater global operation or cooperation? You know, we all want the concept of mass adoption, but how do we realistically get there? You know? So I'm going to pause on that point. I'm going to take you over to here because the key thing to recognize is, you know, what does this mean? And why specifically do they keep mentioning things like Canada? And I understand that Canada, you know, is not the biggest country in the world and so on. But you know what? It stands out for, you know, being adapted to some of these technologies and embracing some of these technologies and so on. So when you hear these terms of like data rich, or when we get further into that one, high value payment system, to me, the writing is literally on the wall. You know, data rich, high value payment tells me that SHX in the future with mass adoption has to be worth a decent amount of money. But how so? Well, let's get into that nitty gritty. So I'm going to go ahead and full screen this. I'm going to play the video here in a second. But what exactly does ISO 222 mean for Canadians? But more importantly, what does it mean for like people abroad, right? Payments carrying more information with each transaction, better interoperability, more convenience, and opportunity for economic efficiency. This is about 4 minutes, but man, it really pounds it home in regards to understanding data-rich payments. So let's go ahead and play this and we'll come right back. Here we go.
Countries around the world are moving to a new payment message standard, one that supports larger amounts of data to be transmitted in a payment. Existing electronic payments carry only basic information, like the amount paid and the date of the completed transaction. We've all scratched our heads looking at our bank statement, trying to remember the details of a payment. Businesses have the same problem. That's a big reason why the majority of Canadian corporate and small to medium enterprises still use checks to run their day-to-day business. Because checks actually convey more information about the payment than today's digital options. But checks also have some very costly drawbacks. Namely, they take a lot of people time to process, which also introduces errors and other things that would be nice to avoid. In fact, the lack of adequate payment processing capabilities is now costing Canadian businesses as much as $6.5 billion a year. In such things as labor-intensive matching of customer payments to invoices, poor visibility of supply chain and collections, and limited predictability of cash inflows and outflows. Imagine the possibilities if payments carried more information with each transaction. Payments between businesses could communicate invoice and purchase order numbers to enable automated processing, straight through with their integrated accounting systems. So, what's the holdup? Anyone who remembers the sound of an old modem connecting to the internet knows that we are in a new era of ultra-fast and robust digital connectivity. Why haven't electronic payments already caught up? It comes down to messaging standards. The current messaging standard used in Canada was developed back when bandwidth was not in such plentiful supply. There simply wasn't the room to include much information with electronic messages. With the adoption of the International Messaging Standard, ISO 20022, electronic payments are about to get rich, data rich. So, what is ISO 20022? What kind of benefits will it bring to Canadians? And what is Payments Canada's role in bringing the standard to Canada? ISO 20022 is an international standard for payment messages. To date, 30 countries, including the US, Eurozone, and Japan, have adopted or are planning to adopt ISO 20022. This standard allows payments to carry the rich information our future payment system needs. This means using payment information to create new services and make domestic and international commerce more seamless. Some of the benefits that Canadian businesses and consumers can expect include smoother cross-border exchanges, faster adaptability to changing technology, the potential for programmable, smart money, less reliance on manual processes and older technologies, innovation in products and services, some of which we might not even be able to imagine today, and enabling billions of dollars in savings. The idea is to get everyone speaking the same language, the ISO 20022 language. As more businesses and countries adopt the standard, benefits will compound. Payments Canada is leading the initiative to adopt ISO 20022 and support the vendors and organizations adopting the standard. It's all part of a massive upgrade of Canada's national payment system. An upgrade known simply as modernization. Data-rich electronic payments are coming. A new era in Canadian commerce is almost here. For more information about Payments Canada and ISO 20022 enabled data-rich payments, visit payments.ca.
Okay, awesome to be able to share that with you guys. I'm going to jump over to the next part of what we have in regards to the outline. We talked about before the whole thing of high value payment system. And that's the next part of the outline we're going to get into. So let's go ahead and just jump on over to that. Why is this important? Well, number one, look at this example. You have this thing called links. And in the past, I've actually used links back when I used to work at Best Western many, many years ago. So you have these message specifications, and just to make it a little bit bigger for you can read it, go ahead and zoom in. So why is this significant? Well, at the end of the day, it says following the ISO 222 message specifications for links, Canada's new high-value payment systems support financial institution participants in developing their very own ISO 222 enabled internal systems. So they can do what? They can generate and process customer and financial institution wire payments in links. I mean, think about that. You know, we talk about all these different types of industries. You know, for me, Best Western many years ago, you know, hotel industry and so on. But there's so much more to it than just that. Well, let's take you over to this. And basically speaking, it's understanding, like I always mention, the bigger picture. So, how so? Well, look what it mentions. Links is Canada's high value payment system. And of course, we're going to have other examples in that regard. But before we play this video, I want you guys to understand it's basically those who participate in this financial or these financial institutions to safely send wire payments on behalf of who? The customers. And more importantly, Canadian dollars. What about other countries? Well, it says based on real-time gross settlement model, wire payments cleared and settled using links are fast and basically made with real-time settlement finality. Links is also built to support ISO 222 financial messaging standards and basically getting the whole thing of invoices, details, or purchase information to travel with each payment. Can you imagine a time that we're going to be living in here soon in regards to sending a payment and having so much information, you know, backlogged, if you will, not in a bad way, but, you know, attached to that payment. Say what you want. Taking just cash, even though people like cash, don't get me wrong, you know, and you give it to a person, there's not a story behind it, you know? That's the main thing. How can you have a real story behind it, and how quick will that story pass, you know, through the world that we live in? So let's full screen this. Let's jump more into this. I like some of these statements because it's going to give you an overview of why this basically matters. And this is only about 2 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and full screen it. Let's go ahead and play this, and we'll jump back into the next part of the outline, which is some of the use cases in regards to 222 labs and, of course, the bigger picture. So here we go.
Lynx is Canada's high-value payment system. It is an electronic wire system that facilitates the real-time exchange of large and/or time-sensitive payments between participating Canadian financial institutions. These payments are used to settle amounts owed between financial institutions as a result of their customers' activities. Lynx is critical to Canada's economy, not only as a means of moving money to where it needs to be, but also as the key mechanism by which the Bank of Canada implements its monetary policy. Lynx was designated by the Bank of Canada as a systemically important payment system. This means it is required to pass strict risk control measures and testing. Lynx is also built to support the ISO 20022 financial standard, which allows for more information, like invoice details or purchase information, to travel with a payment. These data-rich payments deliver important benefits to financial institutions and their customers, including the ability for straight-through automatic processing. This means less reliance on old technology and manual reconciliation of payments, which take a lot of people time to process and can introduce errors and costs. Faster adaptability to changing technology, meaning innovation in products and services for the present and into the future. But how is Lynx experienced from a consumer or business perspective? Maybe your company is making a major acquisition and a multi-million-dollar payment is necessary to seal the deal. Maybe your child is buying their first home and you've offered to cover the down payment as a gift. Financial institutions use Lynx to provide wire payment services directly to their customers. Visit payments.ca to learn more about Lynx, Canada's high-value payment system.
Okay, bottom line is this. Even though you hear statements like that about Lynx and so on, you may be wondering about, like, SHX. The point is this: how Stronghold is tied into the bigger picture of all of this, right? So you heard the terms of high value payment system. Let's take you into 222 Labs' website, where they're going to show you some more examples of what? Well, some of those use cases. So let's jump over to here. And I like some of the statements that you see on the screen. Numerous beneficial use cases, vendor payments. Talks about how ISO 222 can be a payment that can be sent with remittance data. See, this is what I'm talking about. Because we know, if you've been studying the whole thing in regards to Stronghold, they stand out when it comes to remittances and that data. So even though you don't necessarily see it plain as day mentioned as Stronghold, why would Stronghold go through all the trouble to retweet and pin and show highlights about some of this stuff? Again, it's the underlying technology that ties everything into the bigger picture. It says it plain as day: remittance data. And what it basically does is providing details, one or multiple invoices that can be sent in a single payment and how it's intended to be covered. Again, that's just from a vendor side. What about funds disbursement? Talks about this. What about e-invoicing? I mean, all these things, matching historical payments, refund payments, bill payments. But so much about what, guys? Payments, 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 all the way. But even in life and health, commissions, insurance companies, brokerages. I mean, my God. I mean, there's so many darn industries tied up into this, right? I mean, I'm not going to drive you crazy with some of this, but, it's all there. And I like how you see some of the examples. Now, let's jump over to this. This is cool. I saw this. This caught my eye. Because at the end of the day, we would like to all know who is truly winning the race for real-time payments. I mean, we could talk until we're blue in the face about some of this stuff, like who's doing the bank-to-bank and who's doing the peer-to-peer. But you know what? Stronghold stands out when it comes to remittances. So this was awesome to see this. Thought I would share it with you guys. And even though it's back in January, it pounds home why we hold Stronghold. Okay, it's understanding supply and demand. So I'm going to jump down into this because, in my opinion, it does really get into the nitty gritty. And more importantly, understanding the Federal Reserve's position in regards to this. So I'm going to take you to this part about one of the main reasons you will see more about the concept of adoption and so on. So it basically mentions here that, you have a case of the U.S. banking system and how you will see a percentage of adoption in other countries. Hence why we use the example of Canada. It says another reason is the uncertainty created by the Federal Reserve's decision to launch its own real-time payment system, FedNow. The Fed announced FedNow in 2019 and finally launched the course last year. Literally right around this time last year, July 2023. But it says many banks and credit unions are reluctant to join the clearinghouse for real-time payments network. Think about that for a second. Why is that? Maybe because of trust. They already understand the value, but it has to be about trust, right? So it says, before knowing about FedNow's features and pricing, it is risky to invest in a system that might be obsolete or incompatible with FedNow, right? I mean, again, a little bit about the trust, but more or less, they, like you saw in the examples, it showed like dial up. Like, are we acquiring old technology? Well, it says additionally, the extent which the Federal Reserve will, basically take measures to hold back the clearinghouse real time payments growth was not yet clear and maybe still isn't. But it says, with all this in mind, many banks and credit unions took a wait and see attitude, which slowed the adoption of RTP in the U.S. Now, go back to this statement for a second, okay? Where it says Federal Reserve will take measures to hold back. When we get to the end of the outline, if you're not convinced about what the Federal Reserve is doing and who they're holding back, but more importantly, who they may be showcasing, then I don't know what to tell you. All right? This other statement. Now that the Fed now is up and running, things seem to be changing. According to David Watson, who's the CEO over at the clearinghouse, TCH, the launch of FedNow has actually boosted the demand for TCH RTP. Think about that. You hold Stronghold. Isn't the whole point of holding some of these, particular digital assets, kind of like, stocks and so on, right? Stocks will get sent, or crypto will get sent when supply and demand kick in. Yes, that's the whole point. All right, let's get into a little bit more about this. So, in regards to this, the claim that TCH RTP network had added 130 new members since July last year, reaching a total of 456 financial institutions, is crucial. He expects this number to keep growing as more banks and credit unions realize the benefits of TCH RTP for the customers and, of course, their operations. A little bit more about this. FedNow's website reports that its network has 360 members so far. However, there is some overlap between the two networks. About 100 institutions, look at that. Yeah, 100 institutions, guys, have joined both systems. Represents 21% TCH RTP members and 28% of FedNow's members. These institutions may be hedging their bets or testing both systems to see which is better suited to address their customer needs. Now, go back to these percentages for a moment, okay? 21% on TCH RTP, 28% in regards to FedNow. All right. Doesn't Stronghold basically, is part of both of these sectors? Now let's take a moment to talk about that. Because we want to know something? What is the main focus of all this? If you came into this video, didn't watch it from beginning to end, your main key takeaway should be the concept of ISO 222 messaging standards. So if you're hitting both of these particular sectors, if you will, whether it's from the FedNow perspective or whether it's the clearinghouse perspective, and you hold Stronghold, and you understand the concept about remittances and so on, again, your key takeaway should always just be ISO 222. And yes, I do state this in regards to a lot of my other coverage when it comes to these other cryptocurrencies that we hold that are tied to what, guys? ISO 222. Because guess what? You get that whole flip of the switch, if you will, that mandate, which in my opinion is the flip of the switch. So November 20, 2025 comes along. Well, guess what? I don't think all ISO just goes gangbusters right immediately. It could. But what ones would be tied into the one that has, as the saying goes, that demand, or part of a high value payment system, or is endorsed by some of these things that are literally tied in and have that utility put into motion? My God, you already have Stronghold, who sits at the table and is already, really getting the motor going when it comes to mass adoption, to already hit some of these percentages. Okay, what happens again when that mandate happens? That's what I'm talking about. Hopefully you get what I'm talking about when it comes to the bigger picture about this. We're going to highlight a couple more things here before we get into the closing comments. I want to put some things into context, and basically it is this. Where it talks about FedNow, and where it talks about this system, it says right here, it's highlighted, TCH, in contrast, publishes this information on a quarterly basis. All right, about the volume and value. That was the previous one. Sorry about that. But it says, according to its latest report, at least back in January, TCH RTP, listen to this, guys, handled 64 million transactions worth $34 billion in quarter 3 2023 alone, which represented an increase of 11% in transactions and 18% in value compared to quarter 2 2023. Again, think about the bigger picture. What happens when we get the mandate? You don't think they're going to do more transactions? Do you not feel bullish on Stronghold? I try not to hype things up, but the research, it hypes it up for itself, does it not? Look at this for a second. These numbers suggest that TCH RTP is gaining popularity among its users. What about us? What about us who hold some of these ones that are tied into all this, right? Remember how we mentioned in regards to remittance data? It says we cannot say for sure how it compares to FedNow without seeing FedNow's data. We can only hope that FedNow will start or soon start to share statistics and performance. And again, once we get an update about that, we should totally do another, I guess you could say, video deep dive about this. But the completion, or competition, I should say, between FedNow and TCH RTP is likely to continue and intensify in the coming years. This could be good news for consumers and businesses. Well, how about investors, right? Like us, as they benefit from lower fees, better services, and more innovation from the RTP. Now, when you hear this statement of lower fees, better services, that will be towards the end of the outline. I'm going to pound that home, because I want you guys to understand that in closing, before we wrap it up, when they made those statements about the clearinghouse and real-time payments, guys, listen to this. This platform, if you weren't aware of it, allows financial institutions to process and settle payments, of course, in real time. Think about what FedNow is supposed to be designed for, right? The RTP network has launched, of course, back in 2017 and was the very first of its kind to provide what is referred to as a payment rail in the United States in 40 years. And this is tied into remittances. It's designed to be used by all, yeah, you heard that right, all federally insured United States depository institutions. A little bit more about this if it hasn't caught your attention. I'm so glad to come back with a Stronghold video for you guys. RTP in itself provides consumers and businesses with the ability to send and, of course, receive payments 24/7 directly from their accounts. When we talk about utility in motion 24/7, and to have SHX tied into the mix when it comes to remittance data, the underlying tech, do not understand the bigger picture. This is why we invest in utility-driven coins and tokens. All right, so if it's on 24/7, can it very well be used for a variety of purposes? Well, yes. Hence why you saw all these examples from what we mentioned earlier from payments.ca, excuse me. And that basically is understanding that RTP can help businesses simplify payments for customers, improve liquidity management, and optimize capital workflows. Now, in regards to the government, listen to this, because, FedNow is obviously the government. It can help activate local economies through disbursement and, of course, settlement. Now, for some of the guys that are tied into some of these sectors, you know that RTP is technically on paper credit only. Hear me out on that, because I'm sure there's at least one person that's going to mention that. But here's the thing, RTP, while it is credit only, there's no risk of payments failing due to its insufficient funds. Think about that. Isn't that supply and demand? So here in America, we're all about, putting things on credit, creating more and more of that debt, right? Well, being able to have this mechanism that's going to allow for more data to be attached to each payment, such as reservation details or invoice numbers, is crucial. And I think, if anything, Tammy Camp and Sean Bennett and the rest of the SHX team, they get that. So what kind of value do we have in regards to that? Well, I'm going to take you to some of the icing on the cake before my closing thoughts. And here it is for yourself. And this, again, is reshared from Stronghold, right? And also, actually, 222 labs that they've, reshared quite a few times. But again, back to the statement from the beginning. Are you ready? The Federal Reserve Bank confirmed adoption of the new ISO 222 messaging format for FedWire Fund Service will start with a single day implementation on March 10th, 2025. I mean, you combine this with the mandate in November, it's looking really, really bullish for, of course, SHX. I know a lot of people are going to put a lot of focus on this, but I'd rather go with the full mandate. And that's just me. And we may see some things happen on that particular date. And I know people are going to point out it's going to be a nothing burger, buy the rumor, sell the news. But guess what? All these things are positive catalysts because, again, look what you see. And to see Stronghold tied into all this is a big deal. And so I'm going to close it out. Before I do, I want to state this. If you're wondering about this adoption and why it's significant, okay, there's at least two things that we have to wrap our minds around, all right? I know I mentioned a little bit about this, but I want to pound this home. Guys, it's increased efficiency and, of course, interoperability. I know this is not a quant segment. You got to hear this. ISO 222, if you're new to all of this, as we know, is a global standard for financial messaging. Creates smoother communications between different financial institutions and potentially faster transactions processing within, of course, the FedWire system. Now, back to the beginning of the outline, richer data. I mean, I love some of these terms, But ISO 222, in regards to richer data, allows for more detailed information to be included in those payment messages. So, for example, let's say, like what they showed in regards to paying for a house and so on. This could be helpful for regulatory compliance and fraud prevention. So we talk about data rich, we talk about remittance data is seeing what is tied into the underlying technology of, who's part of the bigger, or who's part of that mix. Stronghold's definitely part of that mix. Now, in regards to this, all right, I want to state this thing, and this will be closing it out. We know that Stronghold's SHX token and, of course, the ISO 222 messaging standard do come together to potentially improve financial transactions in a few ways, multiple ways. But more importantly is what I want to get into here, okay? So we talked about data-rich payments, but I want you guys to understand it's the global reach of it all. Both ISO 222 and Stronghold's SHX are designed for global use. ISO 222 is being adopted by financial institutions, not just here in the United States and Canada and so on, but worldwide. SHX's presence on both Stellar and Ethereum blockchains allows for wider accessibility. I know most of us are not a fan of Ethereum, but gotta throw that out there. Essentially, the bottom line is this. Stronghold aims to leverage ISO 222 standardized messaging with the speed and potential of SHX to create a more efficient and global accessibility to the financial system. That's the bottom line. Don't ever forget it. Know what you hold. Know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD 110%. Thanks for watching today's video in regards to Stronghold SHX. Did you take advantage of the dip? Did you buy some? Or did you get flooded out? Anyway, smash the like. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the next one. If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. Say goodbye to complicated setups and hello to Decent Wallet, the hassle-free solution to your digital currency needs. With just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.